Every single one of us wakes up with a question lingering in the background of our lives. Sometimes it's loud and urgent, other times it whispers just below the surface. That question is, why am I doing this? It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of wealth. It's easy to chase after titles, money, recognition, the external markers that the world tells us define success. But there's a truth that's often overlooked. Real value, the kind that lasts, the kind that brings both fulfillment and wealth, starts when we understand our why. Not what we do, not how we do it, but why. The reason so many people feel stuck, drained, or unmotivated isn't because they aren't working hard. It's because they're working without direction. It's like running full speed in the wrong direction. We spend years climbing a ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. Purpose is what gives your work meaning. It's the filter that helps you decide what to say yes to and what to walk away from. Without it, you're not building a life, you're reacting to one. And the moment you begin to live reactively, your value starts to fade because you're no longer choosing your path, you're just walking the one someone else paved for you. Think of the people you admire most, not just the richest or most famous. I mean, the ones who seem truly alive, truly impactful. They radiate clarity. You can feel that they're not guessing at life. They know exactly what they're doing. The ones that get life, they're not drifting. They're moving with purpose. They know their why, and everything they do flows from that center. That kind of clarity doesn't come overnight. It takes deep, uncomfortable work. It requires stepping back from the noise, the expectations, the pressures. It asks you to stop measuring your life by other people's yardsticks. And it starts by asking a simple but powerful question: what breaks your heart? Because value is created where purpose meets action. When you know what moves you, what fuels you, what problem you're here to solve, everything else starts aligning. That's when your skills become more than tools. They become instruments of impact. And a person who understands their why will always outperform a person who only focuses on how. Why? Because motivation fades, but conviction doesn't. If you know why you're building, you won't stop when it gets hard. You won't quit when you're tired or unsure. You'll keep going because it's not just about you anymore, it's about what you're called to do. We often think of value as something external, how much money we can make, how many followers we have, how big our brand is. But real value starts internally. It starts when we align what we believe with what we do, when we stop pretending and start living with integrity. Have you ever worked with someone who didn't really care about the work, but just wanted the paycheck? Compare that to working with someone who believes in what they're doing. You can feel the difference. That belief is contagious. That belief makes people lean in. It creates trust, momentum, and magnetism. That's value. That's where wealth begins. Not just financial wealth, but the wealth of influence, impact, and meaning. Companies, leaders, and individuals who understand their purpose don't just survive. They thrive. They build cultures, movements, and products that matter. They don't have to push people to care. People choose to follow them, to buy from them, to support them, because they resonate with their why. The funny thing is, when you start with why, wealth often follows. But not because you're chasing it. It follows because people are drawn to clarity, authenticity, and conviction. People invest in purpose. You don't have to know your full life purpose today, but you do need to start being curious. Pay attention to what energizes you. Notice what frustrates you. Not in a petty way, but in a this shouldn't be this way kind of way. Look for the themes in your life, the moments that made you feel alive, even if they were hard. That's your clue. When your actions are rooted in purpose, you become a force. You stop needing external validation because you're led by internal alignment. You stop fearing competition because you're not trying to be better than someone else. You're trying to be the best version of yourself in service of something bigger. Here's the truth. Becoming more valuable is not about doing more. It's about being more aligned. It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. You can build a business, a brand, a life based on someone else's blueprint. But if it's not your blueprint, if it doesn't reflect your values, your mission, your truth, it will eventually collapse. Purpose is what keeps your foundation strong when the storms come, because they will. So the question isn't how can I become more valuable? The question is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because once you know your why, the how and the what start to take care of themselves. You begin to attract the right people, make the right decisions, and create work that actually matters, not just to others, but to you. That's when value becomes real. That's when wealth becomes meaningful. That's when life stops being something you chase and becomes something you lead. We live in a world where knowledge is everywhere. You can search for anything and get 1,000 answers in a second. Information is abundant. It's not what's rare anymore. What's rare, and therefore valuable, is curiosity. Not just the kind that looks for answers, but the kind that never stops asking questions. The people who become truly valuable in any environment, whether it's business, leadership, or life, aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who are always learning, always evolving, always asking, what else can I understand? What more can I explore? Where am I blind? We've all met the person who's convinced they've arrived. They know the answers, they figured it out, and they're no longer open to new ideas. At first, they sound confident, but give it time and you start to realize they're stuck. Because when you stop learning, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, you slowly become irrelevant. The world is changing fast. Technology, markets, people, everything evolves. And if you're not adapting, you're not standing still, you're falling behind. Curiosity keeps you ahead. Curiosity keeps you open. And most importantly, curiosity keeps you human. There's a myth that once you get the degree, the promotion, the credentials, that's when you've made it. But the most successful people, the most valuable people understand that learning doesn't stop when school ends. It begins there. Think about this. The most expensive skill in the world isn't coding, engineering, or even leadership. The most expensive skill, the one people will pay anything for, is the ability to learn quickly, adapt deeply, and solve problems creatively. All of that starts with curiosity. Curiosity isn't just a mindset, it's a decision. It's waking up each day and saying, I don't know everything. It's being willing to look at your own ideas and say, maybe there's a better way. That kind of humility doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous in the best way. Because you're not trapped by your past success. You're free to evolve. And you're curious, failure doesn't scare you, it informs you. Mistakes stop being threats and start becoming teachers. Curiosity reframes the whole game. You stop needing to be right all the time because you care more about getting it right than being right. And that changes everything. Think about the people who rise to the top in any field. They don't get there by doing the same thing for 20 years. They get there by doing 20 years of things better. They ask questions, they seek mentors, they explore new tools, and they adapt with purpose. That's how value compounds over time. Wealth, in its truest form, is a reflection of how much value you've created, not how many hours you've worked. And value is directly linked to your ability to keep learning. Curiosity is the gateway to ideas no one else sees, to opportunities others walk past, to conversations that unlock new ways of thinking. Have you ever noticed how young kids ask why 100 times a day? That's not annoying. That's brilliance in action. They're not trying to challenge you, they're trying to understand. Somewhere along the way, most of us are taught to stop asking why. We're told to fall in line, play it safe, stay in our lane. But the world doesn't need more people who follow instructions. It needs more people who question assumptions. Every industry that's ever been disrupted didn't collapse because people weren't working hard. It collapsed because people stopped asking questions. They stopped being curious. They thought they knew better. And someone else came along, someone more curious, more open, more daring, and they rewrote the story. Curiosity is the beginning of innovation. It's the birthplace of empathy. You can't understand people you don't listen to. You can't solve problems you haven't tried to feel. Curiosity invites you into someone else's world and says, show me what you see. And when you do that, not only do you become more valuable, but you help others feel valued too. If you want to increase your value, read more, listen longer, ask better questions. Not because you need to sound smart, but because you're genuinely interested. People can feel the difference between someone who listens to respond and someone who listens to understand. And when you operate from that place, people trust you more. They open up to you. They share their real problems with you. And when you hear real problems, you gain the chance to create real solutions. That's where wealth begins. Not with a product, not with a pitch, but with curiosity about the person in front of you. Value follows those who follow their curiosity. Because when you're always learning, you're always evolving. And people want to work with, follow, and invest in people who grow. Not just financially, but mentally, emotionally, and creatively. The truth is, curiosity isn't a personality trait, it's a discipline. You choose it, you protect it, you develop it, you put yourself in rooms where you're the least experienced person. You surround yourself with people who challenge you. You read things that stretch you. You try things that scare you. Because in that discomfort is growth. And in that growth is your edge. The day you stop learning is the day your value starts shrinking. Not because you're not talented, but because you're no longer stretching. And no one pays a premium for comfort zones. So don't be the smartest person in the room, be the most curious. Don't chase answers, seek better questions. And don't seek to impress, seek to understand. Because the people who become truly valuable in life aren't the ones who know it all, they're the ones who never stop learning. There's something quietly powerful about trust. It doesn't scream, it doesn't rush, it builds slowly over time through consistency, honesty, and presence. It's not flashy, but it's unforgettable. In a world flooded with noise, hype, and marketing, trust is the one currency that never loses its value. When people trust you, they follow you. When people trust you, they listen. When people trust you, they listen. And when trust is gone, it doesn't matter how smart, talented, or experienced you are. The room goes quiet, the doors close, and people walk away. Trust isn't a strategy. It's not a pitch deck. It's a decision made in the small, invisible moments. When you say you'll do something, and then you actually do it. When you show up, not because it benefits you, but because someone needs you. When you listen before you speak. When you take responsibility when no one's watching. People often talk about networking like it's a numbers game. Collect enough contacts, send enough emails, hand out enough business cards. But relationships are not built on frequency, they're built on integrity. Trust doesn't come from how many people know your name, it comes from how people feel when they hear it. Now think about it. Who are the people you trust the most in your life? It's probably not the loudest or the most charismatic. It's the ones who made you feel safe, who made you feel seen, who followed through on their word even when it was inconvenient. That's value. That's influence. In leadership, in business, in any meaningful relationship, trust is the foundation. Without it, nothing else sticks. You can inspire people with vision. You can motivate them with incentives. But you can only lead them with trust. And here's the hard part. Trust can take years to build and seconds to lose. It's fragile because it's real. It's built on emotion, not transaction, on character, not charisma. It's not about being perfect. It's about being honest when you're not. People don't trust you because you never mess up. They trust you because when you do, you own it. This is where real value begins. When people see you not just as a performer, but as a person. When they don't just admire your results, but respect your principles. You can't fake that. You can't shortcut your way to it. It's earned in the quiet choices. There's something magnetic about trust. It draws people in. It creates connection. It opens doors you didn't even know existed. Because when people trust you, they advocate for you when you're not in the room. They give you the benefit of the doubt. They forgive your mistakes. And they invest in your success. Too often we chase skills at the expense of character. We pursue credentials but forget reputation. But people don't do business with resumes. They do business with relationships. And relationships are only as strong as the trust they're built on. Trust also builds culture. In teams, in organizations, in families, everything runs on trust. You can have all the talent in the world, but if there's no trust, it falls apart. People stop communicating, they play it safe, they protect themselves, and in that silence, value dies. But where there is trust, there is freedom. People speak up, they take risks, they share ideas, they support one another. And in that environment, value multiplies. Because trust creates safety, and safety creates creativity. If you want to be more valuable, build trust. Show up consistently, say less and do more. Give credit, take blame. Be the first to apologize, be the last to gossip. Protect people's dignity when it costs you something, and when you say you'll do something, do it even when it's hard. It sounds simple, but it's rare. Because in a world obsessed with speed and scale, trust asks you to slow down, to build something solid before you try to build something big, to care more about doing it right than doing it fast. And that's not always popular, but it's powerful. There's a quiet confidence in people who operate from trust. They don't need to sell themselves constantly because their work speaks for them. They don't panic when things go wrong because they've built relationships that can weather the storm. And they don't chase validation because they've earned respect. Sometimes the most valuable people in the room are the ones who speak the least, but whose words carry the most weight. Because everyone knows when they speak, they mean it. When they promise, they deliver. That's not just influence, that's legacy. We often think of wealth as money, but the truth is, relational wealth is just as powerful, sometimes more. A person with deep trust in their network can open more doors than someone with 10 times the money but none of the credibility. If you want to become wealthy, become the kind of person others want to build with. Not just because of your skills, but because of your character. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember what you did as much as how you made them feel. And trust, real, honest, earned trust, makes people feel safe, valued, and seen. That's what we crave. That's what we'll follow. That's what we build with. If you're asking yourself how to become more valuable, don't just add another line to your resume. Build trust. Protect it. Live it. Let your presence be a promise and your word be enough. Because the ones who are trusted are the ones who are remembered. And the ones who are remembered, they're the ones who make the biggest impact. And there's something deeply human about solving problems. It's in our nature. From the first tools we made to the most complex technologies we've created, we've always been driven by one thing: the desire to make life better, easier, more meaningful. And yet somewhere along the way, many of us stopped solving real problems. We started chasing trends instead of truth. We started building what sells instead of what serves. But here's the truth. The most valuable people, and by extension the wealthiest, aren't the ones who follow what's popular. They're the ones who find a real, painful, meaningful problem and dedicate themselves to solving it, because that's where true value is born. There's a temptation to look for quick wins. to create what's easy to sell, what's trending, what gets attention. But value doesn't live in the spotlight. It lives in the shadows. It lives in the quiet, often overlooked frustrations that people deal with every day. And the people who dare to enter that space, who see a problem that no one else wants to touch, and say, I'll take that on, they're the ones who rise. Real value comes from being useful, from being needed, from being the answer to a problem that matters. And when you align your work with real need, wealth becomes a byproduct. Not the goal, but the result. Because people don't pay for noise, they pay for solutions. They don't buy products, they buy relief. Clarity, progress. It's easy to confuse being busy with being valuable, but busy doesn't change the world, solving problems does. You could spend your entire life working hard, producing content, selling products, and still feel unfulfilled if none of it actually helps someone. Because at our core, what we want is to matter. And we matter most when we're making someone's life better. You want to be more valuable? Solve better problems. Not just the ones that are convenient, not just the ones that are already being solved by 10 other people. Find the ones that are hard, messy, unpopular. Find the problems that make people feel stuck, unseen, or underserved. That's where value lives. We often think of innovation as something grand, shiny new tech, disruptive products, billion-dollar launches. But innovation starts with empathy. It starts when you sit down with someone, ask the right questions, and listen. Really listen, not to sell, not to pitch, but to understand. That's when the problems reveal themselves, and when you see the problem clearly, the solution starts to take shape. Wealth follows value, and value follows impact. If you want to be wealthy, ask yourself, what problem am I here to solve? Not what product can I sell, not what brand can I build, but what need can I meet in a way that no one else is meeting it? That's where your edge is. Some of the most successful businesses in the world didn't start with a product. They started with frustration. A moment when someone said, this shouldn't be this hard. Why hasn't anyone fixed this? That spark of discomfort became the fire that built something meaningful. It wasn't about making noise, it was about making a difference. The problem is, we've built a culture that rewards popularity more than purpose. We celebrate trends more than service. The trends fade. Purpose doesn't. If you're building your life, your career, your legacy on what's hot today, you'll spend your life chasing the next thing. But if you build around real problems, deep human needs, you'll never go out of style. The most valuable people in any room are the ones who walk in and say, where's the pain? Not because they want to exploit it, but because they want to heal it. They're the ones who make people feel seen, they ask better questions, they look deeper, they listen harder, and in doing so, they unlock value others miss. Wealth, the kind that matters, is tied to meaning. And meaning comes from contribution, from usefulness, from showing up and saying, I'm here to help. Not because it's easy, not because it pays right away, but because someone needs it, because something inside you won't rest until it's better. Sometimes the problem you're meant to solve is one you've lived through yourself. That pain, that experience, it wasn't an accident. It was a clue, a message. And when you turn your pain into purpose, you unlock a kind of value that can't be taught, only lived. Look around you. What frustrates people? What wastes their time? What causes them stress? What leaves them behind? Don't look for what's already being solved. Look for what's still being ignored. There's gold in those gaps. Because when no one else wants to solve it and you step in, that's when you become essential. And once you solve one problem, the next one reveals itself. Value isn't a destination, it's a commitment, a way of seeing the world. of saying, I'm here to serve, I'm here to fix, I'm here to build what's missing. If you want to build wealth, don't start with spreadsheets. Start with empathy. Start by looking around and asking, where is the hurt? And then do something about it. Because when your work helps people breathe easier, sleep better, live fuller, they don't forget that. They come back. They tell others. And that's when your value becomes exponential. Solving real problems takes courage. It takes patience. It takes the kind of grit that doesn't flinch when the solution takes longer than expected. But if you stay the course, if you build something that matters, wealth won't be the question. It will be the outcome. So the question is not, how can I make more money? The question is, how can I be more useful? The moment you answer that and act on it is the moment your value begins to rise. Not just in dollars, but in impact, in reputation, in legacy. Because the ones who solve real problems, they don't just make money, they make change. And that is what the world remembers. There's something extraordinary about people who know who they are. They walk into a room and they don't have to prove anything. They don't shift their tone depending on who's listening. They don't need the spotlight. But when they speak, everyone listens. Not because they're louder, not because they're flashier, but because they're clear. And clarity is magnetic. In a world that's constantly trying to pull you in 100 different directions, be like them, talk like them, sell like them. There's something profoundly powerful about being grounded in your own identity. Knowing who you are, what you stand for, what you're building toward. That's not branding, that's alignment. Most people think value is about having the right skills or saying the right things. But real value starts with something deeper, authenticity. Being real in a world that's constantly asking you to perform, that's rare. And anything that's rare is valuable. You don't become more valuable by pretending to be someone else. You become more valuable by becoming more you, fully, unapologetically, authentically. But that's not always easy, because the world doesn't always reward originality at first. It's safer to blend in, easier to play the game, but the people who make the biggest impact, the ones who create real wealth, real legacy, are the ones who choose to be themselves, even when it costs them. There's a difference between being liked and being trusted. You can be liked by many and still not be valued. But when people trust that who you are behind closed doors is the same as who you are in public, when your values, your words, and your actions are aligned, then you become essential. People don't just follow you, they depend on you. And that starts with knowing what you believe. Not what's popular, not what gets applause, but what's true to you. What do you stand for when it's hard? What do you protect when no one's watching? When you know your values, really know them, decisions get easier, the noise gets quieter, and people feel safer around you. Authenticity doesn't mean oversharing. It doesn't mean putting everything on display. It means being consistent. It means acting from a place of purpose, not performance. It means showing up the same way for everyone, not just when it's convenient, not just when there's something to gain. It's ironic, really. So many people spend so much energy trying to be more like others, like the ones who are successful, the ones who've made it. But what actually sets you apart, what makes people lean in, is when you show up as you. Not the polished version, not the rehearsed version, the real version. You can feel it when someone's in alignment. There's no friction in their words. Their energy is steady. Their presence is calm. They're not rushing to prove or perform. They're rooted. And that kind of presence builds trust fast. Because you're not left wondering who they really are. When you're authentic, you attract the right people, the right clients, the right partners, the right community. You stop wasting time trying to convince people who were never your audience in the first place, and you start connecting with those who see you, value you, and want to build with you. But that clarity doesn't happen by accident. It takes reflection. intention, sometimes even unlearning. You have to ask the hard questions. Who am I really? What drives me? What am I willing to walk away from? What matters more than money? When you answer those questions honestly, you build something unshakable. And here's the thing. When you're rooted in authenticity, your value multiplies because you're not chasing opportunity. You're aligned with purpose. And that's when you stop just working in the world and start shaping it. People want to follow someone who knows where they're going, but they trust someone who knows who they are. That's the kind of leadership that creates impact. That's the kind of presence that builds wealth, not just in your bank account, but in your reputation, your relationships, and your sense of fulfillment. And the truth is, your identity is your greatest competitive advantage because it can't be copied. Anyone can replicate your product. Anyone can mimic your strategy, but no one can be you. And when you build a life, a business, a legacy around that, around your values, your voice, your vision, you become irreplaceable. Authenticity isn't always comfortable. It will cost you sometimes. You might lose people. You might disappoint others. But the people you lose by being real were never truly with you. And the people you gain, they're with you for the right reasons. The most valuable people aren't always the loudest. They're the clearest, the most aligned, the ones who refuse to trade their identity for attention. And when you choose to be that person, day after day, moment by moment, your influence becomes lasting. So if you want to become more valuable and wealthy, don't just work on your resume, work on your roots. Don't just chase what's trending. Anchor into what's timeless. Because when you know who you are, everything you build will carry that clarity. And people will feel it. That's the kind of presence that inspires others, that builds trust, that creates real connection. So don't look outward for permission, look inward for alignment, because the more you become you, the more valuable you become to the world.